Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is the beginning of 2023, so it's time to talk about what books were at the top of my list of enjoyment for 2022. Said that really weird. Gonna leave it. So I have 10 books to share with you today, and those books are in all kinds of different genres, age ranges, that kind of thing. But yeah, let's get started. And I will tell you what books I have on my top list for 2022. So the first two are going to be nonfiction books, and the first of those is The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating. This slim little volume that was sent to me by Doris from Aldi Books is beautiful. This is about a woman's kind of journey through a debilitating illness that she went through. So I believe she got like the flu or something like that when she was traveling, and it affected her system in a way that she ended up basically bedridden. And this is about her time when she was bedridden. Someone brought her a forest snail and put it in a pot by her bed. And gradually over time, she kind of learns a lot from this snail and how it goes about its daily life. She learns how to care for it. She learns what it likes as far as a living space. And it's just about her chronic illness and this snail's life and facts about snails, and just how she learned a lot of lessons and things that she carried with her through her life after meeting this snail. And it's just so charming, and maybe I liked it so much because I already am super interested and love snails, but also I think I liked it so much because it's just a quiet little book that has a lot to offer. So this one definitely made my top list for 2022. Then I have an essay collection, which is kind of the polar opposite of that last one. This is called I'll Show Myself Out by Jessie Klein. And this is a bunch of essays about Jessie's life, mostly about midlife and motherhood. That's the tagline on it as well. And this is one of the most relatable things I've ever read about motherhood. There are so many things. I tabbed a lot in this where she just talks about motherhood in a way I've never heard people talk about it, and I loved that because I felt like I related. It just, yeah, it was so hilarious but also heartfelt and touching. She just shares a lot of lessons she learned, a lot of things about herself that she learned through, you know, being a mother for the first time and also being middle-aged. And I don't know, I just loved this, identified so well with it, and would recommend it to anybody who is a first-time mom or feels kind of alone as a mother, because I thought that this was really embracing. Next, I have the only sci-fi book that made it on this list, which is, of course, A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers. I actually read this twice last year. I read the physical book, which was sent to me by Tor.com for review, and I read the audiobook, or I listened to the audiobook, and both were an absolute delight. This is a continuation of Dex and Mosscap's journey, and this picks up after the events of the first book and carries us through a couple of different places within Panga, the world that this exists in. And we just get to learn so much more about the world, but also Dex and Mosscap learn so much about themselves and how robots and humans might not be actually that different in a lot of ways. Beautiful, quiet, lovely, charming book. And then I have 3 YA contemporary books that I really, really enjoyed. The first of those is It Goes Like This by Miel Moreland. And this is a book about a band that was, so it's a band, these 4 people, They were teen pop stars, essentially, and not long after becoming famous, they actually ended up breaking up as a band and going in separate directions. And each of those people had their own reasons, except for one who was completely blindsided by everyone wanting to leave the band, and has suffered and really not dealt with her feelings around it for many years. And then they all get back together and reunite for a charity concert in one of the band members' hometowns, and they kind of get to talking and learning about each other's lives and motivations, and reliving and working through some of the things that happened in the lead up and then soon after the band broke up. And this is so much fun. It is full of queer joy, full of friendship and found family, and it's definitely one that I feel like while it does have a music fame aspect to it, it's more about the found family and about really working through relationships and friendships, and it was just a warm hug. And then this one is probably one of the most amazing things I've read in a while. This is called You Truly Assumed by Layla Sabrine. And I actually listened to the audiobook of this, but this is about 3 Black Muslim teen women who live very different lives, live in different areas, have completely different lived experiences, even though many people would see them as a monolith because they are Black and Muslim. And this is a great book for exactly debunking that, like that people are not a monolith, and no race, no religion, no culture is a monolith. And I loved that about this book, because you get to see each of their lived experiences, and you get to see how this, so the book starts out with a terrorist attack having happened in DC, and we see how that affects each of the 3 women's lives. And they come together for this, to work on this blog called You Truly Assume. And it's just a wonderful, empowering novel that just gives you such a wonderful picture into different cultures and ways of life. And I just thought this was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The last YA one is Darius the Great Is Not Okay, and this book just has my heart, honestly, and I think I'll probably end up rereading this year. This book is about Darius, who is a teen who's just never fit in, struggles a lot with mental illness, with bullying, and just basically being an outcast. He's part Persian and has never really felt connected to his culture, and it's just he and his family end up going back to Iran to be with his family because his grandfather is dying, and they spend a bunch of time there, and he really gets to know this boy that's there, who becomes like a really good, solid friend for him. And also it kind of enables him to deal with some family issues around mental illness that he has, that his dad has, and to really connect with his family. And that was gorgeous. The way that family is portrayed in this is so nuanced and layered. And my other favorite thing about this book is that Darius is a tea drinker, and tea is a huge part of this book in a way that only another tea drinker could write. And I just fell in love with it just because of that aspect. But it's just such a full, wonderful, layered book that I would recommend to pretty much anyone. All right, and now we're into the last category of books, which is literary fiction. And these books also make me just so happy. Obviously, that's why they're on this list. The first one is actually the first book I read in 2022, which is Bitter Orange by Claire Fuller. I have become such a big fan of Claire Fuller's. Her writing is just stunning, and even when I don't love the book or the plot, the writing is like a delicious pastry. It's so good. This book is something I think I probably wouldn't normally love, or I wouldn't have thought to pick up, except that it is Claire Fuller. But basically, it's like a psychological thriller in a way, but in a literary fiction book. This woman goes to live at this kind of rundown mansion out in the country, and there are these two people, this couple living there, and she gets like intertwined with them, and it's about just like, there's a lot of craziness going on, honestly. The way that the characters act is very erratic, and at times feels very violent, but also, I don't know, it just has like this indescribable feeling of just like suspense and tension, and just like something feels off throughout the whole book, and some stuff goes down, and it is, I don't know, I just felt like the tension in this was done so well that it builds and builds and builds, and you're just still not ready for the conclusion. And yeah, I can't wait to read more books by Claire Fuller. I have one of hers, My Endless Number Days, Our Endless Number Days, on my shelf, which is her first novel, and then she has a new one coming out this year, and I am stoked to read both of them. And then this one is for my Titanic lovers, and I feel like this is in like a very specific niche, but it's absolutely my niche. And that is A Brilliant Night of Ice and Stars by Rebecca Connelly. I loved this. So I saw this on a shelf at my local used bookstore, and I was like, that looks like it's about the Titanic. And I pulled it off the shelf and I read the synopsis, and I was like, this book is made for me. This is dual perspective, where you have a third-class passenger on the Titanic telling the story of the Titanic side of this, and then you have the captain of the Carpathia telling his side of the story from the Carpathia. And when I tell you that it was just breathtaking, I don't really have another word to describe it, because it was just that. Like, we all know the story of the Titanic. We all know what happened, and so it would be easy for this to be very formulaic, but you get so much depth about the life of a third-class passenger and what that night was like, potentially. Obviously, Rebecca Connelly is not related to any Titanic survivors, doesn't have any like ties to the Titanic, but it just is written in such an authentic feeling way. And then the captain of the Carpathia, and like all of the stuff that goes on the Carpathia to prepare for the rescue, and like the ways that the captain, like what he's thinking and feeling the whole time this is happening, and then even the aftermath and what some of the passengers went through, what the people on the Carpathia did to help the passengers of the Titanic, or the survivors of the Titanic, and also the things that the captain had to cope with. All of it is so incredible and just heart-wrenching, and I just felt like it was done really, really well. This book gave me the same vibes that I got from The Midnight Watch by David Dyer, which is another one of my favorite books, where it was sort of like investigative journalism a little bit, but it was just like, it felt very true to reality with still that fiction element in it. And if you were a Titanic fan, and I feel like this and The Midnight Watch, which is from many years ago, are, in my opinion, the best Titanic fiction out there. Alright, the next book you have heard me talk about so many times, and that is This One Sky Day by Leonie Ross, and this was on the Women's Prize for Fiction long list. I was gutted that it didn't make the short list, and I am obsessed with this. Like, I recommend it to all kinds of people, even though honestly I don't know if this is the kind of book you recommend widely, because it is wild. It's literary fiction with like a fantasy twist, magical realism maybe. I feel like it's more fantasy. But it's set on this island called Popicho, and Popicho is the name of the book in the US, maybe also Canada. But this island is very special. Everybody who lives there has cores, or what would be like a special power or magic or something about them that is unique and enables them to do something special. And we follow a variety of people that have different abilities, and then we also are mainly following this one guy who, I can't remember what they call him, but he is, his purpose is to feed every single person on the island with a very specific meal for them, which is such an interesting concept. The food writing in here is stunning. And then there's just like this wild plot line that happens about a quarter into the book that you just absolutely don't see coming. And it's one of those moments where like, you're like, what just happened? And then all of the ramifications of this thing that happens are so interesting, wild, and just thought-provoking, and in a way that I feel like it shouldn't be based on the thing that happens. But it's just one of those books that I feel like was such a wild ride, and that if I reread, I would get so much out of. So this is one that is definitely a candidate for being reread. And then finally, and these, I should have said this in the beginning, are in no particular order, so I couldn't possibly rank them, especially because they're in different genres. And finally, I have The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Henri Fanon Jeffers. And this chunker of a book is as good as everybody says it is. It is a historical fiction that spans a generation, and generations, because our main like through line is Ailey, who is the current generation of this family, and she's telling her story. Simultaneously, we're getting flashbacks in chapters telling the stories of other people in her family connected to her family, women connected to her family. And it's just this beautiful tale of like matriarchy and strength and the experience of Black women, and it's just hard to describe. It's one of those books that like by the end of it you feel like you've known these people their whole lives. I will say there is a family tree in the front of it, and basically like a genealogy essentially, and you need it, because there were times that I was like, wait, who is this and how are they related and which one of these? And so there are moments of it that are quite confusing, but overall I just thought this was stunning and so well done, and just one of those things that you want to read slowly and absorb and really sit with a lot of the things that happened to Ailey and her family. And it just, yeah, it is one of the books that I looked most forward to reading last year, and it is one that I will not soon forget. So that is it. Those 10 books are my favorite books of 2022, and I would love to hear if you have read any of these. Which ones did you like? What were your thoughts on them? And if you are planning to read them as a result of this video, I'd love to know that as well. I should have said this up front. Those were in no particular order, just 10 books that were my favorites. I couldn't possibly rank them. That's too much pressure. But yeah, I really enjoyed all of those books, and I would love to hear what your favorite book of the year was, or favorite books of the year were, in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and I would love for you to subscribe and stick around. I will have my goals videos coming out soon, along with a revised TBR thing. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you next time. Bye!